and tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome councillors, welcome officers of the council, and welcome members of the public. This meeting is being held in the supper room of the Wāhanga Centre in the Martinborough Town Hall. It is being live streamed and it will be available to you on the council's YouTube channel. For those who are unaware, there are two emergency exits. One is the door that you came through. One is the door directly behind me and Paul. If we need to evacuate the building, use one of those exits and assemble outside by the playground. And in view of the weather, I sincerely hope this is not necessary, because my next instruction is to remain in that assembly area until the building has been cleared. We normally start these meetings with karakia. That's what I shall do now. Mihi ōtara, Peter whānau e hui hui nei, kia tauta rangi Māori e, kia whakatapua tātou ena mea. E whakapanoa ana tātou, omi e hui e. And then we come to apologies. I've had two apologies so far, one from Councillor Maynard, who will be absent for the whole meeting, and the other from Councillor Ealams, who will have to leave at 3 o'clock. So his apology is for an early departure. Do I have any other apologies?
I'll need to step out for about half an hour at 1 o'clock.
Okay, so that's close. Councillor Bosley, Councillor Gray, and
I may have to pop out just for a couple of minutes here and there, just for some personal stuff during the day.
right. Well, we'll try and have intermissions at tactical moments. Okay. Have you got those, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Do I have a mover for accepting the apologies? Councillor Gray, a second. Councillor Ealams, all in favour, please say aye.
Right.
And against? Carried. Are there any conflicts of interest? There being none, we'll move on to acknowledgements and tributes. I have two acknowledgements. You have.
I have two too.
You have two.
But we might be saying the same ones.
Let us find out.
As well, but it's,
You've got two as well.
yes.
Okay, so, well, mine, firstly, is to Rick Mead, an officer in this council, whose innovative idea won the Super Idea Award at the local government Zealand conference last week. So well done to Rick and to all of those who worked with him. My second tribute is to Richard Harding. Richard Harding was the 16th mayor of Greytown and the second to last. He was mayor between 1975 and 1983, and he died 2 weeks ago, if I recall, aged 101. This council sent a floral tribute to his funeral, and his son John has acknowledged and thanked the council for that. Colin.
Yeah, no, thanks very much. My tribute was to Richard Harding as well.
Right.
Having been a long time Greytown resident myself, and knowing Richard fairly well. Also I have a tribute to Ruby Holmes. Ruby was a Greytown resident for many, many years. In fact, Ruby was Ruby Nelson originally, and they had the little grocery shop where the corner cafe is nowadays. So Ruby and Tom lived there, but Ruby passed away recently. So
Thank you very much. Councillor Plummer.
Yeah, my first one is I just want to acknowledge Brian Jepson, who was a long-term councillor and just stood down at the last train, and he had a medical emergency on
Saturday.
Saturday. No,
Saturday.
Sunday. Right, he's in Wellington Hospital at the moment. Spoke to him yesterday. He is recovering and hopes to be home tomorrow. It was very serious, so we wish him all the best.
Yeah.
And the second one, again, to Rick Mead, I think taking the politics aside of the park one way or another, I think what it shows in a very small council with few staff, a bit of innovation can get us to be nationally recognised. And it's not just Rick that did it, it was all of our staff. all the different departments, finance and so on. And so, you know, even though they're the unsung heroes, Rick gets the laurels and congratulations to him, but there's lots of other people behind the scenes who are working. And I think we should acknowledge our staff as
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other acknowledgements?
I'd just also like to contribute in for Ruby and Richard Harding as well. Both a long time great residents of course, and after going to Richard's funeral the other day, our family had a lot to do with him in my young years. When you hear the stories of how he was brought up, and that just you can sort of understand why he had such a peaceful life.
Thank you very much. Okay, so that's acknowledgements and tributes. Thank you, councillors. And now we come to public participation.
may I be excused for about 5 minutes.
And our first public participant is Peter Biggs. Peter, welcome. Please take a seat. And I suspect Amy has provided the structure of these. And so the next 5 minutes is yours.
Thank you. I gather I've got 3 and then 2 minutes for questions.
Entirely up to you.
Thank you very much, Morena. Ko Peter Biggs, toku ingoa. Good morning, everyone. I'm Peter Biggs, and I'm privileged to be the chair of the Featherston Booktown Trust. And I would like to share with you in my 3 minutes some very exciting things that are happening in Featherston Paitamokai, my hometown, in March of next year. As you know, Featherston Paitamokai is Aotearoa New Zealand's only booktown, and we have 7 bookshops there, and also run the very popular and successful annual Featherston Booktown Festival and the Young Readers Program. We're very grateful for the support we received from Wairarapa District Council. Thank you. And we're also very grateful for the support we received from our community, including our 140 volunteers, including His Worship the Mayor, who's been a very loyal and generous volunteer for some time. And I know there are other volunteers here as well. Featherston Booktown is a member of the International Organisation of Booktowns. At last count, and it's rising quite regularly, we've got about 24, 25 booktowns around the world who are members of the IOB, but there are 50 plus booktowns around the world all up. And next year, from Thursday the 14th of March to Monday the 18th of March, Featherston Booktown will be hosting the International Organisation of Booktowns Global Conference, which happens every 2 years. I was at the last one in Borneby in Sweden. There were delegates from 16 countries there, and Featherston Booktown won the fiercely contested bidding to host the 2024 International Organisation of Booktowns Conference. Just letting you know that planning is well advanced. We've got a working group comprising generous and talented people from across the South Wairarapa, and we're delighted that our Deputy Mayor is part of that working group. Thank you, Melissa. The timing of the conference has been chosen carefully. It's mid-March, which means the weather will probably be good for 2 reasons. One, to enjoy this beautiful part of the world, but also a lot of the delegates from the feedback we've received want to come here, enjoy the South Wairarapa, and then go on to enjoy the other delights of our wonderful country. We want to keep also the conference away from the main festival. We've got a small team, so we don't want to overload them. The program update, basically, we want this to be a showcase of the best of the South Wairarapa and our region, our creativity, our talent, and what makes this a very special part of the world to live in. So there'll be an informal barbecue on the Thursday, the 14th of March, the evening. Friday, the 15th of March, we're constructing a Greytown experience. In the evening, there'll be a civic reception. Thank you, Your Worship, for offering to host that. That will also coincide that evening with the launch of the 2024 Karapatia Booktown Festival and the Young Readers Program. Saturday, the 16th of March in the morning, a Pōwhiri and Papawai Marae. We're working closely with Mana Whenua as our partners. A tour of the bookshops in Featherston and the history, and other highlights around Featherston Paitamokai. In the evening, there'll be a creative showcase, mainly showcasing our writers nationally and regionally, but also we'll mix it up with some music as well. And we'll also host people to our home. Sunday is a Martinborough experience. There'll be a vineyard tours, there'll be a lunch in Martinborough, and then in the evening, we'll be hosting Mana Whenua stories at the Lake Ferry Hotel over fish and chips, followed by a dark skies experience. And then Monday, the 18th of March, we've got the global annual meeting, and then the delegates will depart. We've been very fortunate that we've got some seed funding from the Ministry of Agriculture and Heritage to underpin the conference, but we are seeking further partnerships and funding supporters to ensure that the conference is memorable and successful. Robert, thank you. I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions from anybody?
Thank you. Could you tell me just approximately what kind of numbers you're thinking of? Do you think?
Yes, so there were 40 people in Waterloo. The feedback I got from the delegates was that given it's Aotearoa New Zealand and they really want to come, they're going to bring members of their family.
Right.
So I think we're going to see possibly up to 50, 60 people. We're just about to go out with the save the date note.
Right.
Ask people for their indication.
All right.
And we'll make sure that they're accommodated properly, a mixture of ability, hotels, Airbnbs, etc.
Need to book early.
We want to have that all wrapped up by the end of August.
Councillor Olds.
Thanks, Peter, for coming along and presenting to us. And this is quite exciting for us in Paitūmoko. There's no doubt about that at all. And I congratulate you on being able to achieve such a milestone in getting that national, international recognition for our little town. So my question is, I guess, about funding, and obviously you would be seeking some level of funding from council. To allow this to occur.
I had a couple of conversations, one with the mayor and deputy mayor, and they've indicated that they'd be open to a funding submission from Featherston Booktown for the conference, and also with the interim chief executive, who's been also very helpful in terms of let us know what you want, and we'll see if we can help. It's been a very generous attitude from the council all along the Booktown, and we're grateful for that.
Excellent. Thanks, Vic.
Right, well, let's conveniently come to the 5-minute mark. And on behalf of everybody in the Wairarapa, can I thank you and Mary for everything you do with Booktown. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Councillor.
So the next person on the list is Lee Carter. Welcome, Lee. I think I've seen you there. Yes, welcome.
Morena, I don't typically think I need to do the introduction for me. It's a bit strange. And just to hear, Jake, because I want to give some feedback on the libraries item from the last week's Infrastructure and Community Services Committee meeting. There'll be questions through this presentation, which is only really for your thinking. I don't actually need answers. So around Carlton pulling their library staff from the shared services rotation system, I'm actually surprised that none of you asked during the meeting why Carlton didn't consult, given they're a shared service. Speaking to Carlton, they didn't consult because they didn't need to. They didn't need additional budget to cover costs. They have sufficient staff numbers and they are able to maintain and pay for their own staff. So it's entirely possible that the public promotions following the annual plan is proven to be too much of a hot potato, causing Carlton to distance themselves rather than the actual decision not to fund the 165K. In relation to elected members not having the appetite for council to add permanent library staff because of the extremely constrained fiscal environment, I would just like to point out that since the annual plan, 3 permanent positions have been advertised that are not highlighted on the council organisational chart, and the council are calling for graduates. So I'm not quite sure how that fits within your constrained fiscal environment. Revelations of accrued leave for librarians, completely out of control in my view. Personnel increased costs and internal charges are simply mind-blowing. In relation to sharing services, I did ask Carlton, with the rotation now ceased, what does that mean around your shared service? They couldn't actually answer the question and said that there will now be a review. Looking at the Wairarapa Library Service website, there is little to understand what is a shared service other than providing an excellent performance. There is no MOU or any explanation of the why and the benefits of the libraries coming together. Mr. Gardner's point that often shared services is about sharing costs. If the 165K was to be approved, Carlton through the rotation system would have gained staff at no extra cost for them. Which brings me to the question, who has been paying for what and how much has Carlton benefited out of the expense of the South Wairarapa ratepayers over the 23 years of shared service? You've asked for council to undertake a review of libraries, including the management structure. As a ratepayer, I would expect to see a survey released highlighting the current services council provide as a shared service and questions like, what do you want libraries to do less of or more of? What do you want libraries to stop doing or start doing? What services do you expect libraries to provide in addition to current library services? Do you have a library card? How often do you visit the library and what for? And are you prepared to pay additional rates to have libraries open 6 days a week with expected services provided? I would expect a full comprehensive financial overview in the review of libraries since LTP 2021, and that the public are fully informed that any unbudgeted decision that may come from the review, is most likely going to, will ultimately require ratepayers to pay next year. You keep saying you've heard a clear message from the public. Well, the public also need to be aware of the costs involved in delivering on that clear message. Finally, as a ratepayer wanting the best from this council, you might not think I do, but I actually do. I'm going to call out some things that I observed at the committee meeting. There appears to be some blurred boundaries on who is doing what at this council. I'm sure you are all aware that there are clear roles and responsibilities that separate governance and management. The role of governance is not to undertake management's work, and it's certainly not good practice to recommend that work done by governance be adopted without council's participation and advice. Elected members bringing things to the table without the CE or management having any knowledge or oversight is a sure way of disempowering your council. By doing this, you undermine the very council that you swore your declaration to. In my view, there needs to be distinct boundaries between and expectations around the roles of governance, the CE and senior executive officers. If this continues, in my opinion, you may quickly find yourself in a stalemate position.
Thank you, Lee. Are you able to leave a copy of your notes? Sure. Do we have your email? Do we have Lee's notes?
I can email it through to me.
Yeah, thank you. Oh, to Amy would be good. We have time for one question. Okay. We've run out of time, so but go for it, Will.
Thank you, Mayor Martin. Lee, thanks for coming along today. You've certainly come along and spoken to us at a number of meetings in the past. How many terms have you done on Featherston Community Board and SWDC?
If my memory serves me rightly, possibly 3 terms on community board and 1 term on council.
Thanks. So you are pretty well aware of local body politics and the structure and how everything goes. Over the last 4 years, we've had a lot of negative, well, this council has, as an organisation, has had a lot of negative pushback from members of the community. But I'm just wondering about, you've talked about some things this morning, but what are 2 positive things or pieces of advice that you could perhaps share with us, as opposed to some of the negative feedback that has been circulating within?
Well, I can give you one positive, is that I think you're all asking the right questions of council. The committee meeting was certainly interesting, the dynamics and everything that evolved out of that. So you've got to a point where you've figured out these things aren't right, or you need more information. So there's a lot more pushback and questions answers than when I was on council. One of the things that I think would be a real improvement to you guys is if you actually get a real sense of that high level governance that you should be in, And I actually personally think that you should contact Steve McDowell and or Vern Walsh of Meeting and Governance Solutions. They are amazing people. They actually get it. They're really connected, not only in local government, but with the public and they're just real people that will give you great advice. They can't, but I tell you what, you'll never look back after that. So that's kind of where I'm hoping that you'll get to.
Thank you, Lee. We've got quite a few people to hear today. We're going to move on to Warren.
Thanks, Lee.
Good morning.
Morning, Warren. Greetings, Warren.
I've gone back to review all previous council meeting minutes since the previous CEO left. Searching for the following information. What are all councillors looking for in a CEO and who on council is involved in the selection process? I had assumed that this information would not be kept private. In my opinion, the mayor, councillors and community board should be actively involved in the entire selection process. Elected representatives are responsible for representing the interests of the ratepayers and the community. When they have no say in hiring senior management staff, there's a risk that the local authorities direction may not fully align with the preference of the community or the elected officials. At times, situations arise where the mayor, councillors and community boards are left accountable and the community ends up dissatisfied. Community engagement and decision-making for this crucial role represents an opportunity for council to build stronger relationships with ratepayers, gain valuable insights and make more informed and inclusive decisions. It's essential to establish a culture of openness, actively listen to feedback and act on the input received to demonstrate a genuine commitment to transparency and accountability. When one individual has complete control over hiring senior management, there might be a lack of checks and balances in the decision-making process. This could increase the potential for favouritism, nepotism or other biases in appointments. In the infrastructure and committee services meeting on the 25th of July, Mr. Gardner, the acting CEO, made a statement that he was undertaking a comprehensive organisational review. Surely the importance of this review would be left for the new CEO to conduct. Anything else leads one to believe that the CEO has already been appointed. The problem I see, which I believe is the heart of these matters, is the Local Government Act, Section 42, Chief Executive. Under Section 42, the CEO's role encompasses employing on behalf of the local authority the staff of the local authority and negotiating the terms of employment of the staff of the local authority. The Local Government Act 2002, Section 35, which is the performance review of the first term of appointment of the CEO, states, as part of the review, assessing the mix of skills and attributes possessed by the chief executive and the degree to which they align with the skills and attributes that the local authority considers necessary for the future and considering any other relevant factors as determined by the local authority. For me, considering Section 35 is slightly important before committing to the above parts of Section 42. With regard to Section 35, South Wairarapa is heavily involved in building and maintaining existing infrastructure. Therefore, a candidate should have a proven track record of successfully overseeing infrastructure projects with experience in project management, construction, engineering, or a related field, which would be highly beneficial. The CEO should be forward-thinking and open to adopt new technologies and sustainable practices in infrastructure development. Innovation can lead to more efficient and environmentally friendly projects. Furthermore, the CEO should possess strong leadership abilities and guide and inspire the organisation towards its infrastructure development goals. The CEO should also have a good understanding of budgeting, financial planning, and resource allocation to ensure that projects are completed on time and within budget. Moreover, infrastructure projects can significantly impact local communities. Therefore, a CEO who values community engagement and involves stakeholders in the decision-making can help build support for the community. I believe the SWDC needs a CEO with engineering skills as the organisation's focus is heavily on infrastructure projects. In contrast, the CEO with a strong policy and governance skill may be more suitable when authority requires a strategic leader capable of navigating complex political landscapes. Something appears as council has concentrated on since 1989. At that time of amalgamation, boroughs and councils had engineers in charge and satisfied the ratepayers ready for money. It's time to change. The pattern of repeating actions while hoping for a different outcome is behaviour that requires rationality and logic. There is a form of cognitive bias called confirmation bias. This bias leads individuals to seek out information that supports their pre-existing beliefs or hypotheses, while ignoring or downplaying evidence that contradicts them. Have the council got the courage to break the law? Thank you.
Thank you.
I need to answer this. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Warren, very much. It's great to see your interest in this really important job we've got in place. But I think you might be delighted to know when we, your chair agrees a date, we're doing a consultation with the community board. And that will be getting you to rate the competencies that you see as important for the chief executive. But you've already put nearly all the ones that we've got there. So I think you'll be quite pleased with the agreement we've got. But I just question a little bit some of the things you've stated here, because the mayor and councillors, well, certainly have been involved in defining the draft competencies at great length. The councillors and the mayor are going to be involved in the shortlisting, which is usually the way it is done. And the consultation we're doing with the community boards is actually not usually done, but we think that's important, so we're doing it. I mean, in Masterton, they didn't do it with the equivalent of community boards, and in Carterton, they didn't either, but we do think that's important. So I don't think we're actually disagreeing as much as you think, in fact, at all, actually. But anyway, I think you'll be pleased when you have the consultation and you have your input in rating those competencies and adding any extra which you think are missing.
No, we're out of time, but thank you for that.
Right.
You've left us with a copy, I believe.
Yeah.
Thank you. So our next public participant is Mike Gray, who wants to talk about the future of local government review. Welcome, Mike. But please address the council.
Thank you and good morning.
But well, can I just ask, I've invited you to the table, but I haven't invited anyone else at this stage, so.
I am a member of a group which has given itself the title of Citizens Promoting Quality Community Government. That's what many of these people are all about. That's why we're here, among other things. We would like to help you, the council, be a better enabler of democracy and good community governance. You can take it or leave what we are offering you, but we're doing so in the spirit of the review of local government. One of the most important pages in this document, I've just got through a few, is this one. I hope you can read it.
Can you read it out?
I really hope you have, in fact, read the report. This is the guts of what it's all about. The challenges to you and us.
Could you read it up? Because Mike, I can't read it.
Local government must now own and drive the change to make it fit for the future. It's as simple as that. We're all accountable in some way, shape or form. That's our main message, I guess. As part of that process, we'd like to offer the ability, if you'll accept it, of becoming part of the race review process. There's a lot of expertise and skill in the community, and we have access to some of that, and we'd be willing to share that with you in the process. This report has brought about a significant mindset change. And it's about time Because for too long, we're focused on issues and problems. And I suggest to you that this report is suggesting a different focus, which is important. Focus is important, and that's about opportunities and possibilities. Out of all of that, there could be a number of specific things which would benefit the district as a whole. Because we are a collection of rural and urban people, we believe we're better placed than many others might be to assist the council in that way. The mindset changes is absolutely the guts of what it's all about. Any failure to accept that challenge and get on and bring about the changes that are required is very unfortunate. Among other things, there's a real imperative for better engagement between the council as an enabler. The report gives some substance and some importance to the question of your role as the enablers. Local Government Act, Section 10 is very clear. You are to enable democratic local decision making and action. And you're also in the business of making sure that the well-being of the community, whether it's social, economic, environmental, or cultural, is also addressed. So you do have a significant challenge in that way. We believe that we could help you with all of those processes. That's our offer. Happy to answer any questions.
Well, thanks very much, Mike. My CE wants to ask or make a comment.
I have the same report. And I'll be talking to it a little bit later. My comment is that this council did contribute significantly to that report. We made submissions both through formal one-on-one interviews and through written submission. The findings of the report open up a wealth of opportunities to us. At the LGNZ conference just last week in Christchurch, all councils agreed that we would collectively work through Local Government New Zealand in order to champion a way forward for the implementation of many or all the recommendations through this. That is naturally going to require us to engage with our communities in terms of how that comes about. So that's an assurance from my perspective. There are very significant challenges, and some of the things that Mayor Martin and I have spoken about are around financial sustainability of our organisation. So I can assure you that there's been much engagement and representation from a council perspective in the production of that report.
Thanks, Mike. And you did raise about our rating review process and how you could help with that. And I have to say, we've had a number of workshops looking at various models and how best to take that to our community at the end of the day, so with collective voice, I might add as well. But we're getting to the stage, obviously, later this year when we'll be going out for a community consultation on where we've landed. So it's really important that you and your group and the community as a whole submit during that period of time. We're finding that people the numbers of people are not submitting to a lot of the stuff that we put out for consultation. And it's you and our community boards that can really help engage and drive that back around this table, to be quite honest, for us to make a good, fully informed decision. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And our final public participant is Jim Headley.
Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
Oh.
The Mayor stated in his message in the annual plan consultation, consultations must be genuine and we must consider your responses with an open mind and we're willing to change our proposal. These words turned out to be very hollow. I brought up 4 things that needed addressing and none were changed.
Firstly, I would like to thank those three councillors that voted against the approving of the annual plan. At least there is some of you that don't just rubber stamp what is put in front of you. Animal control, and the increase is mostly to do with new dog out. So therefore should come under dog control, not animal control, which would have been done by raising the dog fee by about $70 for the about 4,000 registered dogs. That would have raised the 275,000 required. Whereas putting it on to animal control is to do with wandering stock on the road and funded 100% for rural land value, sees some farmers paying as much as $1,300 plus. The urban paying nothing for most of the benefit. In the revenue and finance policy, it states for dog control, the urban area receives a higher benefit than rural. It looks to me that council has built the dog down and not thought about the funding till the last minute, and without any analysis, stuck it on to animal control. This did not have to wait for a rates review. Where is the application of first principles? Council it even said that there could be change, it could be changed in the review. So the council knew it was wrong. This gives me no confidence in a first principles rates review. I asked council for information that showed urban pay for new footpaths out of their 30% land transport. I found no documentation to back this up. The only documentation found was that was not true. The 21-31 long-term plan, one of the questions asked was spending of 400,000 on new footpaths and curb and channel. Option 1 showed the rates impact, which was 1.38 average per year. Of that, rural 1.03%, urban 0.38. That's not urban paying for new footpaths out of their 30% land transport. Then comes the current rating model for South Wairarapa, shows general rates, urban in one box, urban 30% of land transport. In another box, new footpaths 100%. That shows new footpaths are funded by urban on top of their 30% of land transport, which makes more sense, not out of their 30%. So council have misled us and have not been truthful. So urban have to fully fund their 30% of land transport and not use the 205,000 from paused new footpaths to reduce their contribution. Or the 205,000 has to be shared, 30% urban, 70% rural. Again, I asked why rural pay 75% of the 48% of governments paid by the general rate on land value instead of the 68.3%, which is the rural land value. The answer was, this is how the current rating model is set. That does not answer the question. Is it set by AI? It is a person that sets the model. And if you put the wrong information in, you get the wrong information out. Council used the latest QV valuations for property, whether it's up or down. So that should be changed now to reflect the present.
Excuse me,
valuation.
that is your 5 minutes.
I've only got 2 lines to go.
Oh, you have not got 2 lines to go. That is your 5 minutes. And that brings us to an end of this item on the agenda. And we're now going to move on to item A6.
Well, I'd say,
Would you please,
if you want people
would you
to
please,
participate, you need to be more flexible.
would you please return to your seat?
The documentation that I referred to is all there as well.
We've got the two sentences there, yeah.
So item A6 is actions from public participation. And as we know from our standing orders, we don't debate or make decisions on any of the items unless they're actually already in our agenda. Are there any actions any councillor wishes to raise?
Maybe with the bigs, find out further what sort of funding is not something you're aware of that, just what exactly thereafter.
Okay, we can do that. Did you hear that? So councillor Bosley would like more information on the sort of support,
Right.
financial support.
Financial support for
So Biggs and I have spoken about the concept of making an application through the appropriate fund for this year in support of Booktown.
So item A7 is to accept any extraordinary business. If there is any, I don't know of.
Have the papers that were noted to be tabled in here.
Yes.
They were already in the agenda. I don't
Yes.
think they need to be.
No, I don't either. No, thank you. Good. Now we come to item A8, which is any presentations from the Maori Standing Committee and the Community Boards. And we do have a presentation from the Martinborough Community Board. I'm not sure who is speaking on behalf. Thank you, Storm. You're very welcome. Why don't you come forward and talk to us? Absolutely. Now, I think we are talking about in the agenda, it's page 1, actually. So those who follow in the old-fashioned way. What I will do, we have a report in our agenda. I'll seek somebody to move that report be accepted. I have councillor Ealams. I think councillor Sadler-Footer seconds it. We'll vote on that in the fullness of time. So do you wish to start, councillor Ealams, or would you like to pass over your speaking to Storm?
I'd like to pass over my speaking rights to Storm, Chair of Martinborough Community Board. Thank you, Mayor Martin.
Thank you.
Go for it.
Thank you, everybody, for giving us the time. I appreciate it. Now, when we came on to the new Martinborough Community Board, we were very unfamiliar what the community board can do. So we sought information from the community to tell us what they were looking for. And then we decided how we could best deliver it. And within that scope, Main Farm has become an incredibly important process and asset to our local community. And it is unfortunately for others outside of Martinborough for the Martinborough community. So we think this is a very important asset. It allows us to fund projects to the community for the benefit of the community. And we need to know exactly the status of the Main Farm estate and its valuations going forward. So just to give you a little bit of background to this, in 2019, an extraordinary meeting was called by the then Martinborough Community Board to ask of the officers to perhaps engage in how they managed the asset and how they communicated the information. Now we accepted that, except on one of our action points when we first came to it was still an outstanding requirement that information to be delivered. So what we're saying now is that we find ourselves in the state we were in 2019, which is the amount of information delivered to us is insufficient for us to make good judgment, good delivery of projects that we'd like to support in the community. So what we're asking for now is a list, and I've given you 3 documents. The first one is the 2019 historic document, 58 pages. I don't expect you to have read it, but I do expect there are some bits that you might like to casually look at some stage. There's a 2-part page a summary of that document, which refers to items in that document. So to say, reading it all, you can look into the document. If something is of interest to you, you can see where it's referenced. Go and have a look at what was decided in 2019. The third document is what we come to talk to you about today. And so there are half a dozen, five items that would like to be considered in an actual fact act, because we believe we have the right to control and understand what is happening with this asset. It is not being utilised properly, and we need to make sure that comes about. So the first thing is we request that the council instruct the officers to honour and act upon the commitments they have made on several occasions to review overheads charged, income generated by the Payne Farm estate, and to consult Martinborough Community Board on how those are utilized. We need to also ask how overhead charges are allocated to Payne Farm estate and consult with the Community Board on the detail. For example, we believe this is maybe being treated as a general South Wairarapa District Council asset, and it is not. And we believe the funding and charges for administering that asset have got out of hand. So, for example, 2 years ago, the fees charged to the asset were in the order of 25,000. They are now in the order of 28,000. That would appear to be a very high fee for what we see as being less than adequate services delivered. So we want that consulted, we want the asset to be looked upon as being different to all other South Wairarapa District assets. It is specifically for Martinborough. It was bequested to Martinborough, and I'm very firmly of the opinion that you must honour those bequests. So I ask that this one be treated separately, and as such, it's just an asset to the Martinborough community. So we agree that there should be fair charge in accordance with something that honours the bequest. Keep in mind, funds were determined to service the supporting facility for children with COVID. We also request that we be provided with income and expenditure statements to the board and at a time that of each of our regular meetings. Now, it's not supposed to be criticism, but we just had a meeting last week and we were presented with financial statements from the previous quarter. Absolutely no value to us at all. We needed to know what the current value was and what the current expenditure were. Now, if you can't provide that, somebody should be able to provide an adequate summary, just so we can see what's going on. Because one of the things that's affecting us is we can't make grants to the community, projects don't run. We're getting, I don't say attacked, but we're getting criticised by the community for sitting on funds and not promoting them to the community as such. That is not our problem, but it is our issue. The problem sits with the officers to understand how they are working their financial process and getting decent information, current information to us in a timely fashion. And finally, in the future, we would like to be engaged at an earliest possible timing for any decisions relating to Payne Farm. We do not wish to be given summaries of action items without any input to that summary. So,
no, not particularly. There's been written commitments over since 2019 to address the amount of overheads taken from Payne Farm, with a view not only to review them, but one of the written undertakings say that they'd look at potentially refunding some of the historic money taken. It's that these commitments being acted on now. I think it's time for something to be done.
Yeah.
As I say, we want this money to be available for our community projects.
So just another point, I don't want to push on these things too much, but for example, part of the Payne Farm estate is that transfer station is rented out. We have not received any payment for that rental for 3 years. Why? Unacceptable. So now, please, I'm happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Well, we'll invite the seconder to speak first.
I just really have a question for either of you at this point around whether there's been any conversation either with CE or officers around reasonable timings for your request for information. So
Just like I can answer that question straight away. March, we had a workshop to resolve these issues.
So sorry, I was just specifically you spoke to and one of your points is around having the balance of funds and reporting on funding coming through at a set time. And you mentioned that last week you only had the previous quarters. I'm just wondering if you've had that discussion around actually is that a fair and reasonable period of information with staff?
My comment is a little bit. I presume that's in the
But we had analysed that statement in the previous board meeting.
I would like.
So we weren't going to regurgitate going through that statement.
No, I guess the point I'm trying to get to is it possible for our staff to provide the information you're looking for every meeting, or is actually there naturally going to be a lag in that information coming to you because of timings?
There may be some issues. We accept that, quite frankly, accept that. But what we should expect is that if you can't provide a full summary, a short process is good enough. And that's what we expect. And we discovered this in the workshop, that we don't actually have to have exactly everything on hand, but we do need to have a decent idea of what money we've got. And so you'll see in one of the documents that I've highlighted with you that we had 2019 to 2022, I think we had incomings of 420,000 to the paying state and outgoings of 460,000, which seems we're losing money something. What's happening? The state should be building funds, not losing funds.
Financials are all over the place, actually. And it's not just the 3 monthly income expenditure, which is presumably quite accurate, but there's a lot of outstanding funds that never show up on the balance sheet. There's an insurance payment that we're expecting from a garage that was blown over in the winter. Oh no, a tree. So there's that money to come back. That never seems to show up. There's the outstanding rentals for the petrol station that we still don't have a balance sheet. So as I say, it's not just the 3 monthly reports, because they only give a funny snapshot anyway. The amount that we've got surplus that we can distribute potentially is not clear. And if you look, we've got about 4 different figures from different sources that are very contradictory. You know, Storm just said, from running at a huge loss in quite a short time frame to sort of having a sum of in excess of $100,000 available. We're totally confused as to where the fund stands at the moment.
Thank you, Karen. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to invite Councillor Olds to have his speaking rights. Then I'm going to hand over to the Chief Executive. And then unless somebody else has something to say, we'll put the motion that we receive the report. My problem is that there are arguably 5 recommendations of the report, but in actual fact, I don't think any of them are particularly actionable. We could agree to them, but I'm not sure what it is we're agreeing to. And what I'm going to propose after that is that in actual fact, we delegate the Chief Executive to negotiate with the Martinborough Community Board and develop a memorandum of understanding that both are agreed on that cover the issues such as information provision, agreement on overhead charges, disbursement of income, and other matters that are of importance. So, Councillor Olds.
Yeah, just a quick question in terms of delegation. And I'm not sure how much delegation. In fact, I'll wait till the CE's alert so that I can. He may wish to answer the question if he's having a conversation. So, Paul, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
I was it was in 2 ears. Sorry.
I want to know what delegation Martinborough Community Board were given in terms of the day-to-day management and oversight of Payne Farm as a bequest, because I'm just not clear on that. It's not in the paper, so maybe you can enlighten us, because it would be useful to have that.
Yeah, so there's, sorry for you, Mr. Chair,
Okay.
It comes back to an earlier commitment which was communicated through Ms. Bradley's team, which was around the review of the policy itself, in which that information would be clearly outlined. And so that offer to engage for co-design with the Martinborough Community Board has already been tabled very recently. And the memorandum of understanding concept, that really gets framed up within the concepts of that policy. That gives us a common understanding of how to move forward. So I'm not able to answer your question directly, Councillor, but there is a commitment there to co-design a policy that will get us all on the same page and make those delegations clear.
Yeah, that's great.
Do you have anything further to add?
Through you, Chair. There's a number of documents that we've shared with the Martinborough Community Board. One of those is the original High Court finding back in the, I can't remember the exact year that
In the 60s, yeah.
that explicitly gives the remit of the Payne Farm estate to council.
Yep.
And the policy describes the relationship and any delegations that the Martinborough Community Board might have.
No.
Sorry.
That policy is very dated and it desperately needs some work. And we have made the offer to work with the Martinborough Community Board to update it. It's a real opportunity to make some of those things that are currently unclear more clear, I think.
Thanks.
You probably were answering questions, but you probably have other points.
Yes, I mean, it's, and I think it is pertinent because I think a great outcome would be for us to enter into that co-design process with the community board to make sure that we've got that common understanding and that we're all working together on this. There are the reversal of certain funds, this has been articulated, can only actually come about when we've actually closed out the financial year. And our CFO has made this quite clear. Otherwise, we would be reversing funds that we actually haven't been audited. We need to be clear as to what the reversal is, so we can make an accurate reversal. So I appreciate that there's been some frustration on the time delay, but it's an unfortunate step that we've a position that we've found ourselves in there. On the regular and the frequency of the financial information and reporting, of course, we want to provide as much information as we possibly can. The frequency by which we've been actually providing it thus far is every quarter. Now, we've been thinking about this as to not what's necessarily written within the policy, which is actually only twice yearly. We're wanting to provide more frequent information, so that's why we've been doing it with more frequency than the policy actually requires us to. So that's the second point. The final point really is that the management costs associated with Payne Farm were set through resolution. Any reversal to any resolution that may come about in the future, because it was done by previous council, would need to again be done through resolution and an appropriate funding source identified by this council where that reversal might come about. So we'll do what we're instructed to do as council officers, but councillors need to understand that actually if there is, and if it's decided that there's been any maybe inappropriate or questionable decision around the allocation of management costs to Payne Farm, that money needs to come from a different source. So I just thought I'd summarise with a few points.
We've got a hand waving from Mel Maynard. So can you hear us, Mel?
Yes, I can. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can, thank you. Go for it.
Look, I did just want to clarify some of the information that has literally just been said, because I the bequest was given to the council, but it was the Martinborough Borough Council. So, and part of the bequest states that or whichever entity will support specifically those what the bequest wants and within Martinborough. So, or its surround. So I would state, and it was always said, that the Martinborough Community Board was the best seat for that, because we aren't like the council table that has to have a regional view of the South Wairarapa district. We're the Martinborough Community Board, so we are literally there to focus specifically on supporting Martinborough. So when the 3 towns combined and became the South Wairarapa District Council, the seat for the Payne Farm Estate was with the Martinborough Community Board. It didn't sit with the South Wairarapa District Council. Now, I understand that we can't see things until the end of the year, but we've been asking for information. The original query was from 2019, looking back to 2016, and reversing the funds. Well, the funds have been paid to corporate services. So the expectation would be that where the funds have been oversubscribed, that would then be refunded by where it's been paid to. So all the questions that everybody just had about those things, those are the actual answers. Those are where we would expect to see the money to be refunded from. We are not just talking about the last year's overheads. We're talking about the overheads when it wasn't being looked after. It wasn't being maintained. There was no oversight on it. And as I say, that started in 2019. And that original query, despite multiple, and I believe it's like 7 or 10 actions and requests from the Martinborough Community Board table for information on the Payne Farm, we were told back then when we first started, so this is not this training, this is training before, when we were coming on after following those queries from our previous board in 2019, when we chased it up, we were always told they're too busy with the annual plan, they're too busy with the long-term plan. You can go back and have a look at that and see all that past information and how we've been stonewalled at our table. So we literally are asking for those questions from 2019 to be answered to give us a clear way forward.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Plummer.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Storm, thank you for this, but that's not going to get resolved around the table today at all. And I suggest that we accept the paper and submit it to Paul and Amanda and go back and do the work that you're going to say you're going to do, and come back to us with the outcome, because we've heard lots of things, but we've got one side of the issue here at the moment. We haven't got the other side. We haven't got enough information to make a decision to direct these things. We can't do that without having seen any financials or so on and so forth. It's exactly the same information you're after, actually, for us to make a decision. There are questions of law as to who's responsible and so on and so forth as well. So it's not an easy topic. We need to do it right and make sure it's working for the future for Martinborough. So that would be my proposal, that we hand it over to.
So I'm going to put it to the vote any second. Councillor Ealams, do you wish to write a reply?
I suppose to briefly reiterate that for that 3-year term on the previous training from 2019 to 2022, as a Martinborough Community Board, we asked council a number of times as to what the progress was with regards to those overhead costs. The workshop that Storm spoke about and that occurred in March this year was great to have, from my perspective, for the Martinborough Community Board to have face-to-face communications with officers. And it was at that workshop that CFO enlightened the community board that for 3 years council hadn't been paying the lease of the transfer station into the Payne Estate account. So that was a piece of work that Karen had researched and established. Also in that workshop, Stefan had stated that he would look into the overhead costs and how they could be reviewed. Certainly with the work that has occurred in the first 6 months or last 8 months of this year, with a lot of stuff happening with AP and everything else, I understand why that has not occurred, but I certainly endorse the recommendations and the idea of an MOU occurring between council and Martin Borough Community Board, and I'd just like that to occur as expediently as possible.
So we'll put the vote. All in favour that the report be received, please say aye. Aye. Hence, that's carried unanimously. I'm now going to move that we delegate the CEE to develop a memorandum of agreement in conjunction with the Martin Borough Community Board on a number of matters, including the provision of information, agreement on overhead charges, disbursement of income, and other matters of importance to the board. But before I speak a seconder, I need an indication, Dawn, that this is an acceptable way forward, please.
Do I have the right to comment on a couple of things that came about?
No.
Because I think there was a misinformation.
There may be. Yeah.
So look, I think, again, I disagree with you. I think these are quite specific action. The only thing I asked for.
Can you please talk to the motion?
So the information on item 1, you want me to read the item?
I know, I want you to talk about the motion that I'm about to move regarding the development of the memorandum of agreement.
That's what I'm talking about. Sorry if you're not quite understanding what I'm saying.
I'm just seeking whether you endorse that approach or you don't.
I endorse that approach.
Okay, thank you. Then I will move the motion. Do I have a seconder, please?
That is unfair.
You don't discuss a motion until it's been put. So I put the motion. Is there a seconder? There is. Councillor Elam's. Thank you very much. I think it's clear, picking up what Councillor Plymouth said, that this is not going to be something that's settled no matter how long the meeting goes today. There needs to be a meeting of minds, needs to be a sharing of information. There needs to be a number of other things that need to come into play. And that requires some person to person or CEO to Martin Borough Community Board work. And thus, I think this is a positive way that we can ensure that the concerns of the community board are being taken account of. It will obviously come back to the full council eventually, and we can at that stage check in with the community board on whether they're satisfied with progress. So that would be my comments. Councillor Elams, any second things?
I'd just like to defer my comments and allow Storm to make comments on what he was wanting.
So we agree with what you suggest. Anything that's missing to be this is what a time frame. This has been going on since 2019, and we've had these same referrals that something's going to be done. What we want out of this meeting today, what we're wanting out of this meeting is a time frame that people will work to. There's two people sitting there that can make that decision. To make the decision.
I will amend the motion so that the work gets reported back to council before the end of the year. Is that acceptable to you, Councillor Evans?
No. I had spoken about and asked for it to occur as expediently as possible.
Yeah.
Is there another council meeting between now and the end of the year?
Yes.
Could I maybe, sorry, an additional point? We're really conscious of, and this is by no means trying to deflect or to defer or to slow things down. You have my utmost guarantee that we will deal with this expeditiously. The reality of our situation is at the moment is that we're in a long-term planning, and this isn't, please don't take this as another delay. We're dealing with the financial side. We're dealing with the back charges. We've been waiting for the end of financial year to be able to do that. We want to engage on the policy. We have just had a resignation from the governance team, and we have to factor in our ability to be able to resource this. We want to co-design the policy, which includes the terms of reference / MOU that you're referring to, Mr. Chair. So all I'd say is, please, let's enter into these discussions in a constructive way, and we will deal with it as soon as we possibly can. We just need some appreciation of our resourcing constraints.
Thank you. That's one question.
Go for it.
I understand what you're saying, appreciate what you're saying. But the funds for the transfer of fund backdate 3 years. An audit would only take the last year. What about the 2 previous years?
No, it will all factor in because there will have been an allocation. Will all factor in the previous years. So, but we have to wait for that to occur, and we're in the new financial year now. So please, we need to work through this. I appreciate there's been a bit of skepticism and cynicism even around our internal processes. I respect that. But we are all on the same page. We are all working on it now. There is a commitment to do it as soon as possible.
Yeah. So we'll withdraw the amendment and we'll leave it as it was. Any comments for or against? In that case, I'll put the motion. Would you like to read it out, Amy?
Didn't quite catch the last bit.
The last bit, disbursement of income.
Disbursement, I thought that's what it was.
Yeah, okay.
So delegate the CE to develop a memorandum of agreement for Payne Farm Estate with the Martinborough Community Board, including the provision of information, agreement of overhead charges, and disbursements of income.
And other matters of importance to the board. Right, all in favour, please say aye. Aye. Aye, against, carried. What we'll do is we'll come to the approving the minutes of the last meeting, then we'll call an adjournment.
Thank you, Storm.
So the minutes, please, thank you. The minutes are on page 67, and they are late to the 28th of June. Do we have a mover to confirm that the minutes are correct, please? Have you? Thank you very much, councillor Olds. A seconder? I'll second it. Oh, sorry. Go for it. Yeah, sure. Understood. You've got anything you want to raise from the minutes, councillor? No. Okay, thank you. Okay, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye, against, no. That's carried. Are there any matters arising? There are not, therefore we will have an adjournment for how long, councillor Olds?
15 minutes, boss.
Okay, 10 minutes. Please be back at 11:25.